has been arrested, even if one person is even left, that one person will go. In as much as democracy is concerned, what matters the most is there is no definition for democracy, because the white man who brought the democracy has never defined it. But in as much as I am a human being, democracy leads me to freedom. It leads me to peace. So in as much as we don't hold arms, we are not armed, and anybody arresting anybody, that means that that person who has sent anybody to arrest anybody is a dictator. I'm a Pan-Africanist. My forefathers who formed the NPP in 1954. If anybody told you that the NPP was formed in 1992, tell that person he's a liar. Okay. There was a party called NPP, the Northern People's Party.
What's your name, sir?
My name is Afani. I'm a musician, a social commentator, a Pan-Africanist, a Kwame Nkrumah advocate, and also a member of the communication team of the ACUP, United African Continental Unity Party. Okay. We are not here to cry in solidarity of in the NDC or for the NPP. We are here to cry in solidarity of the ordinary Ghanaian. Today, Ghanaian children, parents can no longer feed their children.
Well, so you see what is happening right now. So police officers now, they're maintaining the process, arresting some of the protesters who came here and said they're going to protest despite police preventing them. Now you can see police officers here.
Is that what they signed up for? They are suffering.
You can see that some of them preventing us from even speaking to the protesters who have been arrested.
Wow. Good evening, everyone. So with what video we start, good evening, but I want to say this: we have just witnessed 24 hours ago such a Pan-African speech by President Nana Akufo-Addo in New York at the 78th United Nations General Assembly. And then this protest, I think it started even in New York. Now it's happening in Ghana. What just happened? What went wrong with President Akufo-Addo? Kwame, and welcome again.
Greetings to everyone who's watching us on Connect Africa. We are really glad that you are part of us and you're part of Connect Africa. What is happening in Ghana is that there's young people who started a movement in 2001, and that movement is called Fix the Country. That movement rose out of the discontent with the government, and of course, which stemmed from the increase in cost of living within the country, the skyrocketing, cost of living in the country. Everything was going upwards, and there was a lot of inflation. At a certain point, Ghana, had the rate of inflation was similar to those countries which have sanctions on them. Yet this is not a country with any sort of sanctions, not even a single sanction on it. But its inflation was similar to that of countries which have been, imposed the sanctions on them, countries like Zimbabwe and Venezuela. Now, this is what people were complaining about, and this is what people, based on. This is what gave them the impetus to form this movement called Fix the Country, starting in 2021, starting in 2021. And it was basically the young people. Now, what they were saying is that they put a lot of trust in President Akufo-Addo of Ghana, and they removed the previous government, which was of the president called President John Mahama. They removed him because they were discontented with how he was operating, and there was a lot of hardship in the country. So they decided to change to bring President Akufo-Addo. And of course, when President Akufo-Addo was in the opposition, he was making a lot of promises. Actually, one of the promises which he made was that he said that when he comes to power within 18 months, he's going to change the country and he's going to create relief in the country. And when he came, he tried to do a couple of things which somebody would say they were a bit populist, policies which he implemented, like implementing free education for secondary school, which is very good because a lot of children should go to school. But he implemented other policies which have made it very difficult for people, to the point that even the free education which he implemented, it has almost become very useless. They borrowed a lot of money. We have discussed Ghana here, a while ago, we discussed Ghana here, and we saw the rate of borrowing in the country, that it was not sustainable. And if that borrowing actually was done and injected into infrastructure or industries were built, then it would have been good that these industries would be expected to, to bear dividend. They will bring profit. And then you can also show to people that the money which we have been borrowing, this is where we have been investing it. But they have not invested in infrastructure, and they have not invested in any, industries which you can talk of, which are going to process maybe the raw materials which are being exported outside the country. Yet they promised all these things, and they promised that they will not increase taxes when they were coming to power, that they are going to cause tax reliefs, and they will empower entrepreneurs. That has not been done. Instead, what has been done is that taxes have been increased on the ordinary people, and it is becoming unbearable. They have mismanaged the economy. The currency itself has depreciated. When they came to power, the currency was around 5.7 Ghana cedis against $1. Right now, it is at 10, it is at around 11, approaching 12 Ghana cedis against the dollar. So the currency has drastically depreciated to, untold proportions, even to a certain extent. At a certain level, as I mentioned, Ghana was having inflation, which was equivalent to countries which are facing sanctions. Countries like Zimbabwe, which are fighting against the United States, aggression and impunity, of course, and imperialism. And this is Ghana, which is not fighting against any of that, but it is because of the misuse of funds which have been borrowed. Up to $11 billion has been borrowed by this government, which led to the collapse. They led to the collapse of the financial sector, and they handed all the financial sector to the foreigners, to foreign banks. They collapsed the local banks in the country, and they claimed during that period that they are doing financial sector cleanup, and they use up to $2 billion to carry out this kind of activity, which they claim that they are cleaning up the financial sector so that it will be able to support the economy. Now, the blame has majorly been put on COVID-19, even though Ghana did not lock down for very long, like we know countries which locked down their countries for almost a year. Countries like Uganda, when you go there, they locked down the country for almost a full year. Ghana did not lock down the whole country for that long. It locked down only the capital city, I think, for up to 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks to a month, somewhere there. They did not lock down that much, but all the blame has been put on COVID and the Ukraine war. Even some people, they asked in Ghana, is Ghana, some of the Ghanaians have been asking, is Ghana part of the people who are fighting the war in Ukraine? Why do we blame Ukraine all the time? So these are the things which have been angering the people. Now, they went to the IMF to borrow more money. And when they went to borrow more money a month ago, IMF promised the government about around $3 billion. But as you know, the IMF, it doesn't give all that money at once. They'll be giving it in bunches or tranches. So they gave them around $600 million for the start. And it looks like that money is finished now, because that money was sent to the government about 2 to 3 months ago. And we did a program here where we analyzed that about the IMF when it was giving Ghana the money. But it looks like that money is finished now, has been misused, because the country, even though it has good weather and it has land, is majorly importing food like, foods like rice, which is a major food that is consumed by the people, is importing it. The biggest chunk of it is imported. Majority of the things are imported into the country: milk, tea, coffee. All these are coming from outside countries. And so that is a problem. There has not been enough effort for import substitution. So this is causing hardship in the lives, is causing a lot of hardship in the lives of the people, in the lives of the average person, that the management of the economy, which was promised, has not been forthcoming. And this is what we are seeing as demonstrations. And when the young people decided to come out to demonstrate, the government has decided to use force to crack down on them. They informed the police that we want to demonstrate, and they sent a letter, but the police said they will not demonstrate. So the young people say we have to, exercise our right, our constitutional right, and be able to vent out our displeasure with the government. So this is the context that we are seeing. So it started about 2 days ago. Today is the third day, and they are out there. They are still protesting. They wanted to do a march to the presidential house, which is called the Flagstaff House, just like how you hear the White House. They wanted to march. So there was a march up to the Flagstaff House, which is the Ghanaian White House, to register their displeasure against the government. So this is what we are seeing in Ghana, and it is because of that mismanagement of the economy by President Akufo-Addo's government, and this is what people are not happy about.
Thank you, Kwame, for giving that background on Akufo-Addo, and then for what he stands for, what things he promised before he came to power, and now what is going wrong. Now, coming to his speech again at the UN just a day ago or something. So are we seeing a contradiction, because he was trying to be hard and tell the West all that it's not a fair world, it's UN is not fair, this and that. So is there a contradiction in his approach then?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of contradictions in President Akufo-Addo's approach. Somehow his party is the party actually which contributed to the overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. It contributed. They are the group which overthrew Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's government in 1966. And so they were being supported by the CIA. And so they have their roots in the so-called neoliberal democracy. And they say that they believe in the private ownership of property. So the same narrative that is being pushed by the Western world, that's what they subscribe to, him and his government. So when he came, he believed that this is the only way to go, private ownership of property. The government is supposed to play a very limited role in government. This narrative which many of our heads of state in Africa and other countries, which they have drunk from the West, it has been pumping it in people's heads to the point that even places where the government is supposed to intervene and correct situations, and they are supposed to take responsibility, they are always saying private sector, private sector. We hear this narrative about private sector this, private sector that, private sector this, as if this is the only solution. So this is what he, as the person, believes. And even when he came, he tried to sell a lot of government, institutions, institutions like the one which is responsible for electricity, until people realized that there was a scandal within this organization when they were in the process of privatizing it and said it to themselves and their groups. So people demonstrated against it. And when they saw, people discovered a lot of scandals in there, and it was reversed immediately, the selling of the government organization which is responsible for electricity in the country, which is called the VRA, Volta River Authority organization. That is the one responsible for electricity. So this is his approach. Now, but it looks like from his speech at the United Nations, he's realizing that these things which he drank, the so-called approach about private sector this, privatization this, liberalization that, he has realized that these things are not real. These things are fake. This is a fake narrative that they pumped into his head, you know, when he was being educated from when he was young. And he's realizing it when he reaches the seat of power. And so that is the frustration which we are seeing that he is venting at the United Nations, whereby he even reached a point to give a speech which is Pan-African in its outlook, even though he's not a Pan-Africanist. We know that he presented himself as a Pan-Africanist simply because he's from a country which was built by a Pan-Africanist, which has its roots in Pan-Africanism. So that is how he presented himself, because he wanted to attract this tourism from especially the African diaspora. We saw he was talking about the year of return, you know, and a lot of diaspora came in, and which is a very good thing. Of course, we want our diaspora to come into Africa. And then after that, he put up another program which is called the Beyond the Year of Return. But all these resources which came and funds which came with that, they were being misused, and he was not planning very well. You cannot say that these are the infrastructure which he invested in, the money which he borrowed, and all the money that has come in. There's no fundamental change in the structures of the economy. What people expected was the change in the structures of the economy, and that has not been achieved. And what we mean by the change by the change in structure of the economy is that there was supposed to be serious program, purposeful programs, targeted programs, which were supposed to bring ownership of the economy, of the Ghanaian economy, to the hands of the Africans in Ghana. And that means the major sectors of the economy, they were supposed to make an effort to bring those sectors in the control of the Africans in Ghana. And we have not seen that. And which sectors are we talking about? We are talking about the oil sector. It's dominated by corporations which are from outside, from the United States, Britain, and Canada, Taro, you know, and all the other organizations. Gold, Newmont, you know, Anglo-Gold, you know, Anglo-American, they are the ones who are owning the gold, and Newmont from Canada. And these are the major exports of the country. The cocoa is not being processed in the country. It's being exported in beans, in raw beans in Switzerland. Yet when they were coming to power, they were claiming that these are the things which they were going to do. They were going to put the economy in the hands of the Ghanaians. And this has not been done. And even the financial sector, some of the small parts of the financial sector, which are supposed to be in the hands of Ghanaians, also the so-called financial sector cleanup, led to the wiping out of any small ownership that was supposed to be in the hands of Ghanaians, and it was put in the hands of foreigners now. And so these are all the problems that we are seeing that he is facing. Now, this is a contradiction when he comes to the United Nations and says a different thing, and then he, at home, is doing a different thing, and he was taught a different thing, which he thought that when he comes to power, he will let practice, they will let him practice what he learned, the so-called free market. He's realizing that there's no such thing as free market. And now when he goes to the United States, when he goes to the United States and the United Nations in New York, that is why you are seeing that he's saying that the United Nations is an unjust organization. The powers, you know, the global powers, the major powers, are unjust. They have to pay reparations. They built their economies on slavery and colonialism. These are the statements which he made. And yet, when he was coming to power, he was praising how it is good to build an economy on private property, private ownership. So if he is saying that private ownership of property and the so-called neoliberal democracy is the solution, why is he saying that the United States and Britain and Europe built their countries on slavery? Because you were supposed to know this since you are old enough. You were supposed to have read the history of where you come from to know these things, so that you don't push false narratives onto your people and you tell them that when you elect and you vote me, then I'll bring the heaven for you. You were supposed to know this and tell your people the truth and tell them that those countries which are telling us that we should build, when you vote for me, then we will build it through neoliberal democracy and build it through neoliberalism, neoliberal capitalism, we will be able to build an economy for you and bring heaven for you. You should have told your people that this is not true. This is not true. These countries built their economies on slavery and colonialism and plunder of African resources. The same thing he's saying at the United Nations. That's the same thing he should have told the people. But he did not say this because he wanted to be a president. Now, when he's realizing that this is the fact, this is the truth, now he is going to the United Nations to talk about these things. So these are the contradictions which we are talking about in his speech. Now, there's contradictions, there's a mismatch between action and word. So if actually he had known this, then he should have also made the corrective action, because you make corrections. If you borrowed all this money, around $11 billion, you can even remove $500 million, set up some factories, which people can see. Set up some refineries of maybe gold, refine some gold, inject some money into refining cocoa, at least take $1 billion and dedicate it. But not even a single $1 billion was dedicated to this project. The roads are bad. People are complaining about roads. The roads which were built by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in the 1960s are now dilapidated, that they have even failed to maintain them. Both the parties which have been in power, the one which was removed and which is NDC, and then the one which is right now present, which is the NPP. So this is what people are complaining about, that they are tired of electing. They are not voting machines. If you look at the demonstrations, people which have been doing, and if you look at the pictures, and of course I will try to show some of them here. If you look at the people, they are saying that we are no more voting machines. We are not voting machines. We are tired. We are tired of voting if this voting is not leading us to anywhere. If this voting is turning us into voting machines, then we are tired. So I think that this is what the African people in Ghana are trying to demonstrate. So yes, so that is what is happening with Akufo-Addo, and these are the contradictions. This is the mismatch between action and utterances from him.
Do you think this will most likely continue going on, or is it like a one-time game? As you said, it's not the first time. The movement started to fix the country a while ago, but the man managed to have a second term. So do you think really this will go stronger and bring him down even before the second term finish? Or yeah, which...
Yes, so let me first show you this one, Mahlet, so that you can see. If you can allow me, please. Okay, thank you.
What is my greeting card?
Wow.
So this is what we are seeing with President Akufo-Addo, of course, and
that was in Accra.
Yes, this is Accra. This is definitely Accra. Let me see this one. Let me show you this one also. Let me show you one more, and then we'll go from there.
Knowing that people go there to receive medical attention that saves lives, and for years you have not built it up. I would like to understand the reasoning behind this. You must understand that the country does not belong. You must understand that the country does not belong to one person. It does not belong to two families. It does not belong to the people in power. It belongs to us. How you break a hospital knowing that people go there to receive medical attention that saves lives, and for years you have not built it up. I would like to understand the reasoning behind this. How you can know that people are here dying and you want to build a cathedral. Yeah, the God where you don't want to build a cathedral for, you don't care about the lives of people in the Labadi there. That'll be all I get to. I beg you, if you don't say no, go do the job, up and leave. Resign, leave. If you can't. So far, you can't. There is no reason why we will all be here suffering, and then everyone should be making money. How can you lose money in your house, in your bedroom, and you don't know that the money is gone? How do you know that? How can you live like that? And then when they want to bring it, and you come look in the face of all these intelligent Ghanaians and tell us that it has been wrong. Nah, man, you guys, you're not ready. We have time. We will sleep here. You will understand that we are tired. You will get it. You will get. You know why here? You will understand that we are tired.
So, if what do you want now? As it stands now, what do you want?
Are you a Ghanaian? Are you going through what we are going through? Honestly answer. Leave your station. Honestly answer. Are you going through what we are going through? Are you? Madam, are you going through? Don't run away. Don't leave me. Answer me. So that I know that I'm not mad. So that I know that I'm not fighting for my children alone. I'm fighting for you.
We can see a lot of protesters here. It's a common goal. It's a common goal.
This is your answer. This is your answer. She cannot even talk. Because if she talks, somebody from somewhere will take her job. She cannot even tell you that she is suffering.
Right.
Call your brother and your sister, call your family members and ask them, are they going through what we standing here are going through? That is it. Thank you.
Ooh. Oh
Yeah,
my! I love my
Yeah,
Ghana.
so the life is really hard. The life is very hard for the youth. And to answer your question, which you put across, the people are tired, and it looks like this movement is going to go further. And of course, it's because the circumstances in the former British colonies in Africa are different, quite different, that there has been that camouflage of showing as if they have some sort of freedom, yet that freedom is not there. Now, the colonialism is so hidden in these former British colonies, you know, the control, because majority of the British colonies, they passed on to the United States. It is the one which is in control. Of course, they are sharing with the British and all the other European countries, but they are majorly under the boot of the United States, is the one which opens for them. So the colonialism is so sinister. That's why Nkrumah was warning about it. When Nkrumah wrote the book, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, because some people were talking about French colonialism is more brutal than the British colonialism. Nkrumah was saying that colonialism is colonialism. There's no difference. There's no difference. And then when Nkrumah wrote that book, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, he was warning about the United States. Majorly, the major warning in neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, Nkrumah was warning about the United States, that it is more dangerous. Why? Because Nkrumah had seen what the United States had done in Latin America. It had been there for more than 1.5 centuries since Haiti got its independence. It had been under the boot of the United States, under the feet of the United States, oppressing. And then the other countries like Cuba, all those countries, the word banana republic, for example, many people have been using the word banana republic. But that banana republic is because the United States had turned Latin America, majority of the countries, into banana republics. What that meant is that they were farm. They were a farm for the United States. The United States capitalists, the rich people in the United States, used to own these countries. They would go and grow bananas in these Latin American countries and bring the banana and export it to the United States. They owned them, individuals in the United States. Just like today they say the Clinton family owns Haiti. They do whatever they want. So that was the attitude. That is the attitude. And then we had the so-called Monroe Doctrine. The so-called Monroe Doctrine, which claimed that Latin America is the backyard of the United States. The United States, out of nowhere, claimed that Latin America belongs to it. No any power is supposed to come to Latin America and have a relationship with Latin American countries, apart from the United States. So this is what Nkrumah saw that the United States has done there. Then Nkrumah started warning the African heads of state in the 1960s and said that we have to unite because the enemy who's coming is much more brutal, is much more sinister, and he has more power, he has more money, is more ruthless, and is more aggressive, is more murderous, and is more evil than even the British. Why? Because his methods are hidden. He uses hidden tactics. And that's what Nkrumah spoke about and said, neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And you see that in his book, in the chapter called The Mechanism of Neocolonialism, Nkrumah mentions that foremost amongst the neocolonialists is the United States. That is the statement he started with somewhere in a paragraph in the chapter called The Mechanism of Neocolonialism. Foremost amongst the neocolonialists is the United States. So Nkrumah was warning. Now, what we have had in these former colonies of Britain, they were taken over by the United States. So the exploitation is subtle, or is serial, is silent, but is so brutal that it is almost someone putting a syringe on your blood when you are sleeping and you are not hearing, but somebody is taking your blood and you are sleeping. So that is how the United States is operating. The exploitation is going on while he's telling you that you are practicing democracy. That is democracy. We have had Ghana being called the beacon of democracy on the African continent. This is the word they have been using. Now, this is the statement which President Doumbouya, Colonel Doumbouya of Guinea, Conakry, was mentioning yesterday in his speech at the United Nations. And he was talking about that those people who allow the exploitation of their resources and give it to the imperialists, they are given democratic credentials. They are given certificates that they are so this, they are given special names. And Nkrumah also, when he was the president of Ghana, warned about this, warned the heads of states about this in Africa, and told them, Nkrumah said that we have to be very careful of the imperialists because they use tactics and divisive, they use divisive labels whereby they term this one as better than the other. You see, they say that, oh, Botswana is better than Nigeria because the Botswana is more democratically, advanced. Is more developed. Botswana has its own problems. Okay, and those problems can only be solved in an integrated Africa. Of course, it's a big country and it has a small population, a very small population of less than 4 million people. So if it has all these resources, there's no reason why it should not develop compared to Nigeria, for example, which has more than almost up to 300 million people. So there's no reason why it should not develop when it has a bigger land. It has much more plenty resources. So what Nkrumah warned about, that we should be careful of these labels that are being planted by imperialists to try to make one group of Africans feel good about themselves, that they are better than another Africans. That we should be careful of that. It is not true. And this is the same thing which Colonel Doumbouya was reiterating at the United Nations, that those leaders who have accepted to be puppets, because the imperialists have maybe some information on them, they have something on them, they force them or they give up by themselves. And then, of course, in return, they are given democratic credentials. But what you don't realize is that the exploitation that is going on in those countries is very sinister, is difficult. And that is what we are seeing in the former countries that were colonized by Britain. And that's why you see that those ones who resist, they are demonized. You are seeing what is happening in Zimbabwe. This is the power of the United States. That is the brutality of the United States. That is how evil this country is. That if you refuse, then they bring out all the tools against you. This is what you are seeing on Venezuela. This is what you are seeing on Cuba. Sanctions on Cuba for the last 60 years, more than 60 years. Cuba has been under United States sanctions. This is how ruthless, this is how brutal these people are. This is how evil these people are. Venezuela, Iran, you see, and now Russia. They use all the institutions in the United States are built in such a way that they are for exploiting others, other nations. And of course, for the benefit, even the United States itself, when you go there, it is for the benefit of the few elites in the United States, not all the citizens of the United States. And so this is the problem that we are seeing, that at a certain point, the chickens will come home to roost. At a certain point, the chickens will come home to roost. That you cannot lie. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that you can lie to people for some time, but you cannot lie to people all the time. You cannot lie to people all the time. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. So, and this is what we are seeing. So you can lie to people.
We have that from Bob Marley song.
Yeah, I think I think, but you know that Bob Marley was a great reader, but I think it was originated from Lincoln. It originated from Lincoln because Lincoln lived before Bob Marley. Remember that Bob Marley is much younger. So this is what is becoming true even in Ghana, that we are seeing that people now are demonstrating, because these have been lies, the so-called lies. They are giving you democratic credentials while they are stealing your resources. And the people are saying that no, democracy is supposed to be complete, is not supposed to be stopping at the ballot. Democracy does not stop at the ballot. We want to see it in our plates. We want to see democracy in our pockets, instead of that democracy only stopping in the pockets of the elites who are selling out our resources to the foreigners. And so this is the backlash now we are seeing. These are the problems, that the United States cannot lie anymore. The imperialists cannot lie anymore. See, they cannot use slogans anymore. So these are I think that they are the challenges which President Akufo-Addo is facing in the country, that he has to follow up on his promises and he cannot do it. And he wants to reverse and he cannot reverse. There's no more time. He has only 1 year in office. Mm-hmm. And so the country is in a very difficult situation. So this is an extension on one side also of what is going on in the former French colonies. This is an extension, but it's because, like I said, here there has been that camouflage that you are in democracy, when in reality you are not in a democracy. You are in some form of colony that is being exploited silently. And so that is what majorly that is going on in Ghana, and people are coming to put pressure on that. And the movement, of course, started 2001. It has been underground, and this is very similar even to what is in Nigeria. That the Nigerian movement also went underground, but when it starts exploding, when it comes out and starts exploding, I don't know how they will be able to handle it in Nigeria. Even in Ghana, that's what we are seeing right now, that the movement which started in 2021 is the one which is coming back now and is resurrected, because it has been now underground and the dissatisfaction has been underground. So, but we will see where it will go, from here, but we don't see it, receding or going backwards. We see it continuing to, to push forward, and it's going to be problematic unless there is some economic gains that have been injected into the economy, which I don't see capitalists doing in the Western world, since they have been benefiting and they are also facing problems in their major economies, in Britain, where they are facing major problems, and the African people are demanding that they have to own their resources. So it is difficult for the capitalists, and that is the same thing that you are seeing. The Akufo-Addo is disappointed and is venting it out at the United States that they are not helping, they are not supporting, and stuff like that. So they promised him these things, and he's not seeing them. So he's realizing that they promised him lies, and he has been promising the same lies to the people. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
No, thank you. I'm just wondering how that $11 billion so far he borrowed, how that can be repaid. I'm sure they're gonna come and start to say, "Oh, we own this country for this amount of years." Not only Ghana, by the way, there are many countries who have that case, high debt to be paid. Even also from China, where China is threatening in some cases to take the airport or to.
But the major lender is the West. The major lender, for Africa has been the West, even though the West has been using lies and misinformation, but the major lender for Africa is the West. The West owns about 77% of Africa's debt, and China owns only 13% of Africa's debt. So that also should be very, very clear there, that the use of China as a scapegoat is strategic, is a tactic, and is a smear campaign against China, because they don't want China to work with Africa, and simply because they want Africa to stay subjugated to them. They want Africa to stay poor, and they want it to stay in their control. So if they see that China's debt is coming close to theirs, then that's what they're causing alarm. They don't want China's borrowing of money to Africa to surpass their own, because they are the ones who are benefiting now from Africa's debt, because we pay interest. We pay interest on that money, and that is what has been making them rich. And in fact, we pay much bigger interest. That is why at the IMF and the World Bank, when we borrow money, we pay 9%, 7%. When Britain and Europe borrows money, they pay 2%, 1%, 3%. So it is a business. It is a business of exploiting the poor people of the world. So they own majority of the debt, and therefore they have been lying to the world that China is burdening Africa with debt. But in the real sense, it is the West that is burdening Africa with debt, and it does not forgive debt. We saw Russia at the Russia-Africa summit. Russia forgave Africa about $20 billion, and no one made a lot of noise about it. When the West, you ask them to forgive debt, they will not forgive debt. They will forgive like $100 million, and they will make a lot of noise. They will make a lot of noise around the world that they have forgiven Africa debt, 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
But previously, we have not heard them in recent times giving any debt forgiveness, even though African heads of state, as you have heard even at the UN, United Nations General Assembly, many African heads of state have spoken about the forgive of debt. The President Lazarus Chakwera of Malawi has been, in his speech, he mentioned this: you should remove the debt from Africa. They will not remove it. But when it is China, they will make a lot of noise about China. But that is a trick which many Africans have to learn. They just don't want us to develop. They want us to stay poor. They want us to be trapped. Because when they are demonizing China, they are trying to push any relationships which Africa is, is trying to develop. It is just like a jealousy ex-boyfriend or girlfriend who is trying to push, so that is how it is. He's trying to push you because he has seen that you have a new boyfriend who's treating you much better. Then they get jealousy and they go around and they start telling you that your boyfriend is a thief. They start sending you messages. He's a thief. He's a murderer. Don't go with that boyfriend. So that's the behavior which the United States now is using against China, because China is treating Africa much better. So that's the problem. So I just want people out there to be very informed that what the United States is saying, they are complete lies. The debt in Africa, Africa's debt, 77% of Africa's debt is owned by the West, is not China. And only 13% is owned by China. 77% is owned by the West. So that is the truth when we check the figure very well.
In fact, Kwame has done a very good analysis or presentation, I would say, related to the China versus the US, who owns most and the reality. So I think I'm going to pin down that link here. It will give you really a very good background. Yeah, so with that said, we are covered for what we have prepared for today related to what's happening, in Ghana and elsewhere, the protests against President Akufo-Addo, president of Ghana. But we will give some time because we wanted to bring you this fresh as it's happening, and it's a close to heart matter for Kwame, as he's right there in the middle of it. I mean, location wise, were you at the protest? No.
No, I didn't go. I didn't go today. I had some commitment, so I was not able to attend it, but I've been supporting in my own small ways the people who are on the ground. I've been supporting in one way or the other.
Yeah, so next time we will bring you people who were part of it and, organizing the thing. Even today we scheduled, but for some reason the person couldn't make it. But this will not be the first time. Now let's go to your questions, because I have been saying drop your questions in the chat section. Before we go, actually, let me thank Nubian and Gifty Sanai for your kind donation. It means a lot. Thank you very much. Yeah, and then for reminding others to hit that subscribe button. Thank you. This is why I love the family here. You take you are also volunteers. And you remind people. They were telling them that we see 100 of people, but we see much less than that number of likes. So hit the like button. Yeah, it all helps the YouTube algorithm indeed. So thank you. While you are watching, please do that, and even more, please share the video. Don't keep it for yourself, the information and knowledge. Let's empower each other. I have seen some questions. Let me just I go from bottom to up. Mikey, I lived in Achimota, great place. Okay, USA says USA allocated 500 million a year for 5 years, starting 2022, specifically for the media to produce and disseminate anti-China. Wow. Okay, let me just select questions where I see question mark. I mean, a lot of really important information here also shared. I've seen somewhere a question mark.
Yeah, Mahlet, I wanted to show our people some of the pictures from the protests.
Okay.
Do you think that's okay? While you are talking, I'll be showing them.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get it. No, wait. Okay, are there questions?
There was, but I don't know if it is, I have seen for sure. Or maybe I passed it. I don't know. I overlooked while I am scrolling. Yeah, maybe I did something. Those of you, if you are here who have a question, please maybe drop, like copy paste it again. Maybe I overlooked.
Okay. Yes, Mahlet, can you allow me?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, this is Dr. Nkrumah's daughter. She was
Oh.
Dr. Nkrumah's granddaughter. One of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's granddaughter also, she was present at the protest. So that's how she looks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's one of Dr. Nkrumah's granddaughters. The protest was majorly organized by the youth. It was majorly organized by the youth, and they are not affiliated with any political party. So it goes on to show you how the youth are really tired of the current system. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you some of the pictures from the protests, and those are the people as you can see them. They are majorly young people. They are majorly young people. So that is what we are seeing. That is what we are seeing from the pictures there. They are majorly young people who organized this protest. So that is what we are seeing right there from the protest. That is what we are seeing. So people are tired of President Nana Addo's presidency, even though it is remaining with 1 year to go. By next year, December, he's supposed to come out of office. But they feel that they have had enough. People feel that they have had enough of the government, and that's why they say that he should step down. If he can't do the right thing as a president, he should step down. And we have seen a lot of other presidents who have stepped down from power. So it is not too late for him to step down if he can't do it. And what we want is, what I want to put out there to our people is that we want to achieve.
There is a question, Kwame. Look, saying this, I think there was others, but I passed. But now saying this posted here. Now that he's retiring, meaning Akufo-Addo, what have been Akufo-Addo's achievements, if any, in your view?
Yeah, so for now, I don't know. I think we will come back and analyze this. We'll come back and analyze this when he, steps down from power. So let us save that for, for our analysis that will happen at the end of his stay in power, and then we will see what is the way forward. Of course, his political party is trying to bring another person. They say that will replace him. They still want to be in power, and but as Pan-Africanists, of course, this is not the direction where we want to go. For us, we want a leader who is interested in the unification of Africa. If a president doesn't represent that, then for us it's not useful. And such as him and his group, and even in the opposition, they don't represent that. And what the young people are realizing now, they are not allying with any political party. They are saying that we are not allying with anyone. All of them have disappointed us. So we want to create a third alternative. And so one of the parties which I'm associated with, one of the groups which are associated with, which is the Africa Continental Unity Party, is also trying to position in itself, to be part of this movement so that it can create a solution, because the Africa Continental Unity Party is interested in acting at the national level, playing at the national level to be able to unify the continent. So this is what we are seeing, that these forces need to be directed in the right direction, and that direction which we think is right is the unification of Africa. Any force which represents the unification of Africa, that's the force that we want to welcome, and that is where we want to take such demonstrations and advise such people who are in the demonstrations, engaging in such demonstrations of removing these neo-colonial puppets. Yeah, so we'll come and analyze President Akufo-Addo, Connect Africa, that is what we do here. When he has finished his term, we want to we'll analyze and check. Is he worth remembering? Is he worth remembering in history? 20 years from now, will we be able to remember him like how we remember Nkrumah? Nkrumah has been gone for almost 60 years. Will we be able to remember Akufo-Addo with his contributions? We can look at his contribution and make our own judgment, or we leave you people who are watching to make your own judgment, but we'll come up with his achievements. Like we said, he brought free education for secondary schools, but what else did he do in the country? And of course, we'll bring some other Ghanaians who will be part of us here to be able to analyze and put a torch in him and see whether within 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, he will be remembered as a great president. So we don't want to be biased in that.
Actually, Sendes has that same question in addition, where he asked how Akufo-Addo will be remembered.
Yes.
Yeah, so now you have said that Sinovia, welcome Sinovia again. Good to see you back. I'm also happy the warm welcome you received from other viewers here from the family. Now she asks, Kwame, do you think parties need to be done away with? Parties.
What?
Do you think parties, I think political parties, need to be done away with?
No, parties are just groupings. Maybe what you can say, probably what you wanted to ask is multi-party democracy. Because democracy has different groups. Like, for example, in China, the party which is achieving things for China is a party itself. It's the Chinese Communist Party. So you can't do away with the parties, but maybe you can do away with a certain type of parties, like multi-party, then you have single party, then you have people's pluralistic democracy. So in that's the type of democracy which they are practicing in China. In China, they don't wait for people to complain. The government doesn't wait for people to complain. It is always taking surveys to understand the needs of the people and make policy which are in line with the needs of the people. Of course, this doesn't mean that people don't demonstrate completely. They also demonstrate. After there is things the government cannot take care of everything, that cannot read everything. But at least in China, the government tries, and it is constantly adopting its policies to the needs of the people, because it is constantly taking surveys. And now that is different from the democracy that is being practiced by the so-called Western democracy and countries which are hinged on this type. Here, the only democracy which you have, it stops at the ballot. Once you do the ballot, that is it. That is it. Wait for the next time. No one is going to come and ask you, what do you need? What is this? So actually, to a certain extent, China is more democratic than the Western type of democracy which we are practicing. Because for them, they are constantly on the ground asking the people what they need. Because let's be honest, what is the purpose of electing? Is so that they can deliver the goods. Because democracy or election is not the end goal. The end goal is for you to have services delivered, good policies done for you. But the mistake that has been made is that these people, the Westerners, have made it look like electing and elections is the end goal. So in the Western type of democracy, they don't change policies. They leave you with only election. Once you elect, then you go to your house. You can complain however you want. They will not change anything. They will not change anything. Now in China, you don't go to the ballot, but you receive what other people who are doing the ballot are looking for. The government will come and ask you. You don't need to go to the ballot in China for them to deliver. So that's the difference. So for us, we practice democracy in theory and the Western world. In China, they practice democracy in reality. Their democracy is real. But for us, we practice it in theory. So that is the difference. So political parties will continue to be there. Even in Nkrumah, what he suggested for a political party in Africa, he said that all Africans should belong to one political party, which he called in his book, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. Nkrumah called it the All African People Revolutionary Party. That this is the party which all Africans should belong to. That is when he was removed from power. He was staying in Guinea-Conakry. He had come up with the strategy of the formation of All Africa People's Army and All Africa's People Revolutionary Party. So all Africans should belong to this party, and we should have an army which protects the African continent or fights for the African continent. So parties will continue to be there as long as countries are there, as long as people are there. So a party is just a grouping of people.
All right then. So somebody said, puppet he may be, but meaning Akufo-Addo, but at least Nana did more for African Americans than any American president. Well, let's hear those who responded to the year of return and settled in Ghana, what they say after living for some time in Ghana. It's a different story. But if you are one of them, Timbo, then it's good also if that's your opinion. Okay. Yes, Mikey said Addo will be remembered for speaking better English than an English. Somebody said he will be Barrington. I think he said he will be remembered as anarchist, right? Something like that. Kwame here, a person named Kwame asked you a question to do some research next time regarding the China thing. So you have, he comments, you have to compare how long China has been in Africa to Europe. So Africa's debt to China is quite significant.
Yeah. So what is the real question? Can you come again?
You have to compare how long China has been in Africa to Europe. So Africa's debt to China is quite significant. Maybe there's something missing. I don't know, but that's
yeah. So I think what he's saying is that the first contact between China and Africa, the Chinese had the people who had first contact between the Britain or the British, the Europeans and China. It was the Chinese who had the first contact with Africa. They came to the East African coast. But in the modern times, when it comes to the whole continent, the Chinese, when they came, they didn't come to the whole continent and carve up the whole continent, or maybe take slaves or trade with the whole continent. They did not do that. The Chinese period of trading with the African continent, the longest for the whole of it, engaging the whole continent, it has not been more than 50 years. It has been less than, up to, maybe active trade has been around 30 to 40 years. And yet the West, its active involvement in Africa and taking over the whole continent and engaging the whole continent, it has been more than 600 years. when you start from the 1400 in the 15th century, when they came here and started carving up the Cape of Good Hope, coming the East African coast and entering there and building castles and doing trade, entering inside the continent, coming to the Gold Coast, Ivory Coast, you know, and going inside. They went inside all the way to Nigeria, Congo, and they exploited it. It has been up to 600 years. But now when we look at their trade with Africa, it is much more less compared to China and what China has been able to achieve in the last, you know, 30 to 40 years of China's engagement. It is laughable. So it shows you that China is doing much more better compared to the West. China's trade with Africa is coming close to around $300 million, close to $300 million, the trade between China and Africa. Now, when you go to the West, for the time they have been here, I did a calculation. For the last 600 years they have been here, their trade with Africa should be close to $4.5 trillion for 300 years compared to the Chinese level of trade with Africa in the last 30 years. So if they were trading, if the West was trading with Africa on the same level, with the same, what they call unfair terms that China is doing with Africa, because they normally call it unfair, what Africa is doing with China, China is taking advantage of Africa. That is the narrative which you hear in the West. But if the West was doing the same thing which China was doing, looking at the period they have been in Africa, their trade with Africa should be around $4.5 trillion. But it is not that. Why? Because they have been taking, only taking, they have not giving, they have not been giving back. So that is the reason why the trade between Africa and the West combined, which have, they all have economies, combined economies of close to $40 trillion. Their economies combined, the United States and Britain and Europe, they have their economies are close to $40 trillion. Their trade with Africa combined is around $350 billion. China's economy is only 18.6 or $19 trillion, and its trade with Africa is close to $300 billion. Now, anyone who knows how to calculate can put a difference, that there's a difference between someone who has an economy of 40 trillion and another one who has an economy of 19 trillion, but they have almost the same level, the same amount of trade. And yet, the one with a smaller economy, which is China, and has the trade which is almost equal with the Europe combined, has been here for only about 30 years of active trade with the whole continent. The West, 600 years. So the one with the bigger economy, which is 40 trillion, and has been here for 600 years, their trade, when I calculated, should be around $4.5 trillion with Africa. So it shows you that the West has been here for all that time. It has been taking and not giving anything back, only taking. And that is why they are refusing to go. That is why when France is told that they should go, they find it very difficult to go. They do not want to go. That is why the United States has 30 military bases on the African continent. Why? Because they want to take. They don't want to give anything. They want to take, continue taking, and they use blackmail and they use sanctions because you have refused to give them. Now they will use sanctions on Zimbabwe, places like Zimbabwe. So instead of the United States sending its best businessmen to Africa, it sends its military bases and some of its worst citizens, some of its most murderous citizens, like Victoria Newland, These are the people they send. Instead of sending the best businessmen so that they can strike up business with Africa. Now, this is the difference. For someone who was talking about the United States and China, that's the difference when it comes to trade with Africa. So I want that to sink in for everyone to be able to understand it and understand the West's position. It is the most exploitative group of people. It is the most dangerous group of people. And that's why they don't want to go out from Africa when we say they should go. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. Yeah, for that, really. I think maybe we should do again this presentation of China presence in Africa and the date and versus the West, or repost it, because we combined it with another presentation, I remember. But yeah, in any case, I will pin that. Thank you, Common Man 80, for your donation. Yeah, thank you very much. And we are grateful for that. Julio Menza's question, who makes the weapons used by groups like IS and Al-Qaeda? Well, I don't think in Africa there's any.
Yeah, of course, the major weapon producers in the world is the United States, is the #1 producer of weapons. Even today when the speeches were being given by the Latin American and Caribbean heads of state, majority of them were complaining about the weapons which are flooding into their countries, and majorly they are coming from the United States. So majority of the Latin American presidents, heads of state, Caribbean, they are complaining that weapons, illegal weapons, are coming from the United States and pouring into their countries. And they don't know how these weapons are coming there, yet they don't make any weapons for themselves. So they have been saying that they are trying to tell the United States to calm down and control its flow of illegal weapons that are coming from its country to Latin America and the Caribbean. So ISIS and all those groups, the United States has been creating them deliberately. And we have had this even when the African heads of state are speaking at the United Nations General Assembly. A lot of them spoke about it, that certain groups of people, because I don't want to mention the United States. I wish I was the president. I mean, I would mention it directly. They have been saying that certain groups are using these terroristic groups as a bargaining chip to have access to Africa's resources. And we know who that is. That's the United States and the Europeans. Before they went to Iraq, there was no ISIS. You know, before they went to start fighting against Afghanistan when the Soviet Union was there, they created Al-Qaeda. The United States worked with Bin Laden. They created Bin Laden. So they are the ones who have been creating all these, inventing names, Daesh, what. You see? So if they can go and remove a president, how come they are telling us they cannot defeat Al-Qaeda, or they cannot defeat Daesh, or they cannot defeat ISIS? But they are working with them. They are working with these groups, and they are lying to people that they are fighting terrorism. But they are using them as bargaining chips of having access to oil in the Middle East, because they get these resources from places where there's chaos. So then they kill the President Gaddafi so that they can have access to bring these groups into Africa and create chaos and have access to Africa's resources when people are embroiled in this chaos. And that is why you are seeing that when people like Niger, places like Niger, Mali, they take back and say, we are going to fight it against you. We are going to fight these problems by ourselves. They make a lot of noise and they have a lot of media. So they spread out lies and they say the Africans, they will not be able to fight it. You know, what is going to happen now that the United States has left? As if these people are gods. You see, what is going to happen now that the United States has left? We have had this on Al Jazeera, because now Al Jazeera also has been taken over by the West. So you hear those things on Al Jazeera, you know, but you ask, how many troops did France bring? Or how many troops did the United States bring? 1,500. So you are saying that 1,500 troops in Niger are bigger than, are more important than the 50,000 troops or the 35,000 troops or the 45,000 troops of the indigenous Nigerians. So this is disrespect to our militaries, and it is racist. So they say these things deliberately to try to undermine us and to disrespect us and humiliate us. And this is what, as if we are children, the same thing which, you know, President Doumbouya of Guinea, you know, Konakry was saying. So it's a disrespect, but they are disrespecting you as if they are helping you. They are showing you as if they are helping you. So is that we need help. So you need help. And when you reject that help, we saw this. When you reject this help, then it pains them. We saw this with Morocco, that France was forcing to give aid. And Morocco said, no, we don't need the aid. And France said, we want to give aid. And said, we don't need it. So it pained France because they know that this is a tactic they are going to use to control you. So the so-called Daesh and Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they created them deliberately to create chaos. When they see that you are taking control, they know that you are going to remove the problem. And so you will stop them from having access to the resources. So these are just all tactics, but there's no such thing as terrorists. Which have been created and we cannot manage them.
Thank you for Saturday evening. We went more than what we thought, what we expected. Like we came here briefly, but we knew that there would be questions and then we'll be addressing them. In any case, we are glad. I mean, a lot of things. Mikey Simba said as a joke, an exit joke, who's a better comedy actor, Tinubu or Zelensky? So I will leave the answer to you. Great discussion. The chat is also available even if this stream is over. And thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Kwame, really, for suggesting this show and then being available to tell us what's happening there. So everyone have a good evening and have a good weekend. It's bye-bye from us, and we will see you on the next one. Yeah.